also help to turn the cameras off. The session, as you may have just seen, will be recorded. So if that means you don't want to be, you can always access the recorded session when it's uploaded to the DCJ website, which will be in a few days, and access the information that way and the conversations that we have. There's also the resources that already exist, such as the guidelines and the frequently asked questions, etc., on the DCJ website, as well as contact details. So that's also an alternative if you're unable to continue with the session. But if you are, thank you. We've designed this info session to give you a bit of general and important information, obviously, but more so to answer some questions in the Q&A session at the back end. So the front part of this session will give you a bit of information, quite general, quite broad, but the important information, and then we'll spend some time answering your questions. With that, if you could type your questions in the chat, what we'll do is we'll collate, we've got someone offline actually collating the questions, and then they can come back and ask the questions to the DCJ team, and we get those questions answered that way. And if we need to, we can have discussions. You can turn your mic off and we can have discussions if needed. If we don't get to all the questions in this session, we will send out a follow-up email with other information such as links and things that we may discuss in this session, but also the answers to all the questions that are raised. So you will get the answer, and hopefully we will get to all the answers in this session, but if we don't, we will send out the answers to you. We're committed to doing that. We've got contact information on each slide. So I've got the email address and the contact number for the DCJ program team. So any questions that you do have about the program, about any questions raised here or any kind of issues that are raised, please contact the DCJ program team. And we've also got staff online from the grants team in DCJ. So if there's any questions about the process or Smarty grants in particular, which is what the program, how you'll be applying for the program. Also data access, we've got a staff member to explain that. And then the program team to answer, again, any general questions. So with that, I guess, can I just get Nicole, who's my colleague at Thirriwirri, to introduce herself, and then we can kick off with the agenda.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Nicole Major. I'm a Bundjalung woman from the Tweed area and fortunate to both live and work on my home country. So yeah, hello from sunny Tweed Heads at the moment, and happy to be here with you guys today and certainly support you through this process with DCJ over the next little while.
Thank you. I will start the official proceedings by acknowledging that I am on Gadigal Aboriginal country and pay my respects to elders past and present here, but also extend that respect to the Aboriginal people online and your elders from your home country as well. The agenda, we'll go to the agenda first, just to give you an overview. So what we'll talk about today is what justice reinvestment is and isn't. So there's been a bit of confusion in terms of, I guess, what defines what justice reinvestment program initiative the concept is. So we'll go through over that. We'll talk about the program in general, so the overview, a timeline, and then other important information about the program itself. And then we'll get into a Q&A session, which I said we'll try and spend most of our time there for it to be more interactive and more informative in that regard, and we can answer your questions there. That's it.
Okay, so I suppose the first thing really is to have a bit of a look at what justice reinvestment actually is and the opportunities that it may create for your communities and the work that you want to have an impact on. So essentially, justice reinvestment is aiming to reduce the number of our kids, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people and adults and kids that come into contact with the criminal justice system. It specifically really wants to look at what those underlying causes are and address I suppose the recidivism that is occurring in all of our communities. We're very much looking at a holistic approach to identify and understanding what some of those underlying causes actually are, what some of the issues that are community relevant. So what works for one community doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for another community. So it is very much a community-led response to the issues and unique circumstances that are existing for that particular community. So one size does not fit all for everybody in this case. It is very much community-led, community-focused, and addressing those specific community needs. As Melissa mentioned, there is a range of data that is going to be available to support even identify some of those issues that exist, and we will get into that in a little while as well. But the aim is to try and provide you with as much data and information and support as is needed to help you identify what those community concerns and issues are, and how your community-led initiative can look at addressing those things. We're really trying to get away from the word project or program, because we don't want to put guidelines around what that looks like for you. This is where Justice Reinvestment is doing something new, doing something different, and something that really addresses the needs of your particular community and the community that you're wanting to service and see results and outcomes in. It is around connection with community. It is also around, can be around connections to land, place as well. So there's a range of different things that your initiative can look at and work towards. It is very much focused on making system change and real change for people on the ground in your particular community. And as I said before, there is no one size fits all. So what works for the community half an hour down the road may not necessarily be what you need for your particular community and your particular needs. So looking at different examples that are out there is helpful to give you information, but it doesn't mean that that's what is required through this process. What we probably want to have a look at now is probably a little bit more detail into some of the specific examples of where Justice Reinvestment has had an impact within the community. Paula, I think I can't, there's so many people on there. Yeah. There she is. I couldn't see on the screen. I've got so many faces.
Amazing to see everyone.
Yeah. Did you want to mention a couple of examples where there are things being done really differently in communities to address their particular needs?
Yes, sure. And hello, everyone. My name is Paula Novotna, and I'm the Senior Policy and Projects Officer working in the Justice Reinvestment team here. I'm in a room here on Burramuddigal land in Parramatta. There's 6 of us that are just ready to answer your questions as well. And we just want to pay our respects to all of the Aboriginal colleagues joining us today, and our deep respects to elders past, present, and the next generations. Look, and there's so much wealth even on this call. So I see that there's people with long-standing on-the-ground experience of building Justice Reinvestment. So also a big shout out to those of us who are joining from Just Reinvest New South Wales. So they're a non-for-profit that has 4 current sites across New South Wales. So I see Daniel and Julie from Mount Druitt, Moree, Kempsey, and soon to be built Nowra. So those are examples of where they've had that kind of community coming together and over time really building capacity and planning for change. That's one example. I guess there's also like a whole wealth of examples in Aboriginal regional alliances that have been working under the local decision-making framework. For example, like Barang Regional Alliance on the Central Coast, Murray Parky Regional Assembly in Western New South Wales. They also have that really strong community-led governance. So I guess there's that distinction between like a one-off funding, which is normally a grants proposal of like, you know, funding whatever, like midnight basketball or, you know, a post-release program. Whereas justice reinvestment, as many of you know, builds like a whole of community approach. There's also examples of like Aboriginal community controlled organisations and the Aboriginal Legal Service. For example, there's like the Darrawah Elders Group out in Walgett, and they're building, working towards like community-run wellbeing services and accommodation for children and young people. So there's really that community, like you described, Nicole, that community coming together, having a systems focus, looking at like what is actually the real change, because it might be on the justice end, but it might connect to health, and it might connect to education, and it might connect to youth justice as well. So many kind of cross sections. And I guess the other thing about like community, Aboriginal community coming together doesn't mean that there aren't divisions or there's not, you know, like a longer path to walk, but that, you know, those people who step forward as leaders, as families, or the young people that step forward are stepping forward to work towards real change and have that kind of collective, community-led kind of collaborative impact. So we've got those specific examples. We're happy to send out an email afterwards, like with some of the examples, if that can help.
Yep. Great, thank you, Paula. The examples are there as just information. Again, we want to be really clear that the examples that we provide are not restrictive. They are not what you have to do to be eligible for this round of grants. It's also not tying you into a particular style or model or program or project. We're very much about focusing on the need for your communities and pulling all the strings to get community to look at a collaborative approach and moving community forward away from those touch points with the justice system. I do notice there's a couple of hands up, but what I'm going to suggest, if you've got questions at this stage, could you please pop them in the chat so that we can actually come back to those a little bit later, and we can have the justice team being able to answer those specifically. So if you want to pop something into the chat, if you've got a question, that would be awesome. Melissa, do you want to run us through what it looks like?
Nuts and bolts, yes. Next slide.
Yep, there we go.
So this is just an overview of the program itself. So it is a statewide program. There's $7.5 million is available over 3 years. So it's not $7.5 million for each year for 3 years. It's $7.5 million this year for an initiative to be rolled out for the next 3 years. So just to make that quite clear. There are 2 stages in this program. So the current stage is the expression of interest stage, which is just filling out one form on Smiley Grants, answering a couple of questions. Then if you are deemed eligible to progress to stage 2, you'll then be invited back to complete an application. It's important to note, though, in the EOI stage, you don't have to have a fully formed project plan or plan, I should say, for your initiative. It can just be you getting ideas together at the moment, and then when it comes to the application stage, then it has to be more of a fully formed with costings and stuff like that. But at this stage, you need to just put in an AOI. It's important to put in an AOI so you can actually be eligible or considered to be eligible to progress to application stage. There's also the opportunity to access government data. So DCJ have a data person online, which she'll speak to accessing data and how to do that and what kind of data that can be accessed in just a little while. But just know that there is access to government data to help support your application should you choose to go down that path, and it can, I guess, support the application that you're putting together in using complementary, support and information for the rest of the application. The program or the stages will be via Smiley Grants, which is an online platform, and it's government's preferred platform to use for any grants or grant programs. And the last thing to say is that there are plenty of resources that are actually existing on the DCJ website. So as I mentioned at the top, there's the guidelines, the frequently asked questions, which will be updated as more queries and more questions come in that the frequently asked questions may not cover. And there's also the video, which is great. It's a quick, nice, short snapshot of what the program is and how to apply for it. And there's also the support with the email and the contact numbers. So the program team are also there to support you through any questions or queries that you may have about the program. Like I said, access to data, or even Smarty grants, going through the actual process, technical process. I think that's it for that one.
The timelines for this one?
Yeah, so this is basically the timeline for both stages. So we're obviously in stage 1 now, which is the 23rd to the 18th of March, so it closes on the 18th. So you need to make sure you get your EOI in online via before 18th. What will happen then is the program team will do a preliminary assessment. So whatever information is put in the EOI form, it'll just be used to assess the eligibility of the organisation to then progress to the next round, or to be invited back to the next round. So that will happen about March. Stage 2 will open on the 2nd of April, so it's just after Easter long weekend, I'll add, to the 13th of May. So you'll have 6 weeks to actually put together and submit the application. The application form will be more obviously robust and need more details, etc., of what the initiative is. That's to be done by the 13th of May. Then the final assessment will be done, and the award of grants by June this year.
The other thing I think we need to make people aware of in terms of the stage 2 grant is that there is assistance to actually lodge that grant application. So Melissa and I, both from Thirriwirri, we're a 100% Aboriginal owned and operated consultancy, and we are going to be available to support organisations through their grant process. So that will make that whole process a little bit easier. We've done this a few times with different grant rounds. The most recent one with being with the Paul Ramsay Foundation's Justice grants as well, the Just Futures grants. So we're quite familiar with this style of grant, and certainly will be available to support in that second round if, for those that progress through to there.
Next, I think we're handing it over to Stephanie. Yeah. So we'll just hand it over to Stephanie now. So she's part of the Boxer team, and she'll just talk to you about the data that is accessible and how to use it and the process for that. Thank you, Stephanie.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Ramsey. I work at Boxer, which is the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research. It's a really big name, but it's really just an agency that has a lot of interesting government data around the justice system. So we're talking about, we receive data from the New South Wales Police. So when we're talking about, if we want to include data in your application around the level of crime within the community, the level of victimisation, offending rates within a community, how policed a certain community is, the level of over-policing in a certain community. We have sort of data around that aspect. We also have data about the criminal court system. So when a matter ends up in court, you know, how busy a specific local court is, the number of people going through local courts, what those outcomes are, the kind of penalties imposed by the criminal courts. We also have data on custody numbers. So if we want to know like the level of incarceration from, you know, certain communities, or the level of incarceration across the state for Aboriginal people or kids, really kind of nuanced data around that. So we're kind of working with this Justice Reinvestment program. We're a strong supporter of the Justice Reinvestment program, and believe there is power in data, and that everyone should have equal and equitable access to data. So as part of this program, we'll be providing kind of a general data pack that we can be shared out to all applicants who make that section. So everyone will have access to the same kind of style of data. And we will sit down and host like an information session about like what these data means, because often you just get things in big Excel spreadsheets that don't look particularly user friendly. So we're kind of happy to sit down and run an information session that kind of talks you through what the kind of different data is kind of showing, and what kind of different touch points of the criminal justice system this data could be used to. But we're also happy to sit down with applicants like who might want something different that's outside of like the standard data that's included. in those kind of data packs and kind of work through if there's more useful things we can do. And I can see Daniel and Julie, and they said, give me an example of something you've done recently. So I said, Daniel and Julie did the most amazing Mounty Yarns report that looks at the lived experience of kids in Mount Druitt and had some really kind of powerful takeaways to the government about we could get some data. And so we kind of sat down and we worked out, like, here are a few bits of data that we'd like around police, policing fare evasions on the train and the over policing of young people on the train. So we can provide that data to communities so that they can have that data in their hands to use for their advocacy and the work they are doing. So that's kind of how we're happy to be involved. The email address will come with all the things, but we're always here to support communities put in this application, and data is available on, if we have it, it's yours at a community level. There's no block to being accessed kind of data in this. So if you think you need it for your application, we're here to support you through that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right. Oh, look at us actually on time.
I know.
All right. So what we wanted to get to, because that's a lot of information, and you've probably also read some of the other documents that come with it. So also a lot of information, and you probably have a range of questions or things that you're just trying to get a bit of clarity on to go through this next phase of the EOI, and then obviously hopefully into that next stage of stage 2 where the full application is at. So what I might ask is for the DCJ team, because I can see lots of things going on in the chat, if they had some questions in there that was specifically related to the information that's here, whether it was broken down into different categories or whether there was just a couple of more general questions around the program. Paula, have you guys, I know it's not Murray today, but.
No, that's all right. We've got one question from Stephen that relates to other DCJ funding that's not directly related to justice reinvestment. So that's the only question we have now. And Stephen will set up a meeting with you separately to talk about that. But yeah, we'd love to hear things that aren't clear or anything that we can clarify.
Yep, if you've got a question, pop it in the chat. At the moment, there's nothing in there, but even if you want to raise your hand on the screen, we can probably facilitate that, given that there's not a lot in the chat at the moment. So we weren't sure whether people would have a lot of questions or not so many. So we've set up a number of different options for you to reach out to us, really. So has anybody got any questions? Tom, I can see you've got your hand up there. Do you want to come off mute and pop yourself on a camera if you've got it?
Hi, everyone. I don't know. Can you hear me? Is that working? Okay, cool. Sorry, I've been having IT issues all week, so sorry about that, everyone. Teams is not great for me. Yeah, so just wondering, I guess, is how many people are likely to get the grant and how many people to be awarded, and what type of budget limits are we looking at per organisation? And also, yeah, like collaboration partnerships, would that also be a strong application? Those type of general information, because obviously every grant is different with different, statistics and characteristics. So yeah, that would be just good to know.
Great, thank you, Tom.
Thanks for your question, Tom. Yeah, so I think there's no funding limit at this stage. So that's when you go into Smarty Grants, you'll just be asked if your organisation is eligible. And eligible organisations we give priority to Aboriginal community controlled organisations, and also priority to non-for-profit structures. So whether that's an organisation under Fair Trading or under ORIG, registered by the Office of the Registrar for Indigenous Corporations. So those are who are eligible. And then absolutely what you said about partnerships is key. I guess that's the thing, like with justice reinvestment, the situation's so complex that it's not one agency that can tackle it really. It requires partnerships. So partnerships are really encouraged. And I guess one of the other questions was around whether local councils can apply. So the lead agency has to be an eligible agency, so it has to be like an ACO or non-for-profit, and then a partner agency could be a local council. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, when you log on to Smarty Grants, you'll be asked if you're eligible, an eligible organisation, and then you'll be asked several questions that help us to then make sure that the grant guidelines are really suited to what is needed on the ground. So one of the questions that we're asking is like just generally, and it's just like for information only, you're not going to be, it's not accessible, like it's not, doesn't carry over into stage 2. It only helps us to write the grant guidelines in a way that's really informed. One of the questions we ask is like, you know, what is an estimate of the amount of funding you would want for your initiative? So.
Thank you. That really helps a lot. And I guess the follow-up question to that is, you know, is there kind of restrictions in terms of also interstate organisations? Like, you know, because I know a lot of our mob, so I run the WDO, WDP scheme across Australia, helping our First Nations and LGBTIQA people in trouble with the fines and infringements capacity. But a lot of our mob, you know, are travelling for school and whatever, but, you know, I think they get really lost about having support when they're travelling interstate and when they're coming into New South Wales. So is that something allowed as well of interstate organisations, or is it only New South Wales base allowed?
Thanks,
Yeah,
Tom.
it's a really good question. I think because it's New South Wales money, there is that preference that organisations deliver services in New South Wales. And we understand that that's an issue for some of the border communities, you know, like Optumala or Dayton or Wreck Bay. So I guess because we haven't written those second stage grant guidelines, what would be helpful if you feel like your organisation would like to apply would be to apply and then just include that issue and whether it is possible perhaps for your organisation, if you're, like you think you said, you're national, can you link in with a New South Wales based organisation and kind of come into partnership with them?
We also have some other questions in the chat. Sorry, Nicole and Melissa. One is from Fiona Allison, who asks, is it a non-competitive or competitive grants program?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Hello and welcome. So the New South Wales grants, because there is really a limited amount of money, it is a competitive process. And as many of you know, the Commonwealth has a current Justice Reinvestment grant program, and we've got details of that on our website as well. Just to confuse things, there's two Justice Reinvestment grant programs running, and the Commonwealth one is not competitive, and they have just a larger sum of money. We're also conscious that given the amount of need that's there, that the 7.5 million won't go, you know, that far. So we're just, that's the structure we've had to do, is have it as a competitive grants process.
Thanks, Paula. I'm going to pull out another question from the chat box. Thank you everyone for dropping in your questions. This one is asking about specifically expanding on what Justice Reinvestment is not. Can you go a bit more into that?
Yes, so I think part of the resistance to grants and the resistance to government grants is it's like programmatic, you know, like it's just one program and you get funded for 12 months. So, and there's a lot of knowledge in the room as well as to what Justice Reinvestment can be in a place-based, community-driven way. But I think what we wanted to, the distinction we wanted to make for this grant process is that there's really that kind of whole of community, those 4 elements that Nicole spoke about earlier, that about it being Aboriginal, community-led, being place-based, having that systems focus. So looking at what are those drivers and, like, you know, having that data to underpin it, whether that's community-held data or the government data that Stephanie spoke about. That's kind of, you know, how Justice Reinvestment looks in each community will be different, but it's not like, you know, just one program. That helped to.
Thanks, Paula, for expanding on what it is not.
Sure.
We also have another question for Thirriwirri. can you please let us know what will the scope of Thirriwirri's assistance be? Will it include help with writing the grants application, for example, or something similar?
Yep, thanks. Yes, definitely. We have got a large number of First Nations people working with us. A couple of them have joined the call as well. And yes, part of our role will be to support people through the grant process, including working with you to write your grant. So it's not something that we will do solely on our own. We're going to be supporting you through that process. So we have some, as I said, really experienced people, all First Nations people, that will be able to support through that start to finish 6-week process to get your grant your grant application in the very best place that it can be, to be the most competitive it can be in terms of this process. So yes, we will absolutely be assisting with the application writing as well.
And how can people get in contact with you in terms of if they have further questions about that? Just, is there an email that they can contact you on?
There is, and we can pop that into I can pop it into the chat actually, so everybody can get hold of us through our info email. But yeah, it's a broad scope, but we won't be sort of coming online for that part of it until after this first EOI phase has closed and the guidelines have actually been locked in place for that stage 2.
Thank you. We have another question coming in from Karen. Will all applications be funded for 3 years? Would collaboratively funded submissions be looked at more favourably?
Thanks, Karen. Sorry, we had to unmute. So preference is for 3-year funding. And the second part of your question about whether collaboratively funded will be given more favourably, again, we haven't actually written the second stage 2 grant guidelines, so we can't answer that question. But if there's, again, like, we would encourage you to put in an expression of interest and enter through that first stage and be able to then tell us like what's driving and what's possible on a local level, so that we can take that into account. There's also another question. When would the funding be provided to communities? So the stage 2 is open from April to May, and then the funding and the contract negotiation would happen in June. And that funding would be for 3 years. There's also a question about how will this initiative work with the recently announced Commonwealth program, and is it coordinated? So there was a lot of work behind the scenes to try and coordinate it as much as possible. And the way it's working is that applicants, so if you've applied for the Commonwealth funding, and there's a box on the Commonwealth application that says that you're willing to share your application with other funders. So that information comes to us in New South Wales at the DCJ Justice Reinvestment team. So in that way, that they're both operating together, and there is that possibility to go for both. You're not excluded.
Thanks, Paula. Do we have any other questions in the chat at the moment?
We have a question from Anna, who asks, can funding be used for programs focusing on Torres Strait Islander people struggling with the justice system?
So it is open. We have used the terminology, and that's been something that we've been advised on through our colleagues in Transforming Aboriginal Outcomes, in that Aboriginal communities are the predominant community in New South Wales, but that doesn't exclude Torres Strait Islanders. Like any local, like New South Wales place-based initiatives absolutely are welcome. Thank you for that question.
Any other questions at all? I think that's everything out of the chat. No, another one just popped into it.
When you refer to community data being acceptable, do you mean organisations already working in this space who have their own data? Thank you, James, for your question.
Look, it's really about like so much of justice reinvestment is based in community held and like Indigenous data sovereignty. So it's very much about putting forward, and the application can be done orally, it can be done by video. So it's very much community drawing on their own data. If orgs are already working in the space, or even if they're, if community are coming together for the first time, and they have knowledge that's held there, and that there's a real, they want to tell their stories, that's just as that's given just as much importance as the government data.
And thank you, Paula. Tom asks, when will round 2 guidelines be released?
So they'll be released just in time. The new round opens in the 2nd of April. So this round closes on the 18th of March. So really, we really hope that you'll put in that EOI, and you will let you know in those final weeks of March whether you've made it to stage 2. And then the grant guidelines will be published to those who are invited back to stage 2 by the 2nd of April.
Great, thanks.
Great questions.
Daniel, did I see you had your hand up? But is there? You popped a question in the chat. Yep, thank you.
So Daniel asks, apart from Boxer data, will other government data be accessible? I guess what kind of other data can?
Yeah, I'll throw to Stephanie around that too. There is a whole team that are called data connectors, and we can connect you with them. There's other data from government that you can request, like health data or education data, and there's a whole lot of information that the data connectors can give. We wanted to set communities up to succeed, and we wanted to give them that data within the time, and it's a tight time frame, and none of those other agencies, from what we're aware, can give that data within that, before April. Whereas Stephanie from Boxer has said that like that crime data, that justice data will be available. But absolutely, communities can ask for other government held data. And if they just reach out maybe by email to the Justice Reinvestment, we can link them in with the data connectors, but the wait time for that other data is longer.
Stephanie, have you got anything you wanted to add just from Boxer's perspective?
No, absolutely. I think Paula covered that. I'll put the email back in the chat, and I do strongly encourage the idea of getting governments to transform their how they operate is done by community putting requests into government agencies and to make that change. So I would say if communities are interested in broader data outside the justice sphere, because obviously that is a very narrow piece of this pie, please send those requests through. We'll put that email in the chat to the different data connectors who do work tirelessly to try and get the data out the door. But without knowing the needs of community, it's hard for them to know what they need to deliver on. So definitely don't just see the justice data as the only data. Think about any government data that might be useful, and please apply for that.
Thanks, Stephanie. And there's another question. Thanks, Tom. It says, can we apply for both the Commonwealth and State Justice Grant? And the answer is yes. And we'll put in the link to the Commonwealth grant as well. They're open until the 9th of May, the current round is. So I know it's confusing that there's this two layers, but yes, you can apply for both.
Any other questions at this stage? I would like to just add, in terms of the data that we were just talking about, if you're not able to access data from some of the other areas that both Paula and Stephanie have just mentioned, it's a complementary piece to your application. So if you find that that's not something that you can access, it's not going to diminish your application by not having that in there, I think is Melissa, that's the right way I'm trying to get to that point.
Yeah. It's if it's there and it can support, then that's fine. But you're not going to be, I guess, disadvantaged or kind of disregarded if it's not there. It's not the be all and end all. It is complementary. It's part of a bigger picture, I think. Let's look at it.
Thanks, guys. We have another question from Tiffany, who asks, can communities that aren't restricted to one place apply? This is relevant to stolen generation survivor communities that don't necessarily live in just one place-based community. Great question.
Thank you, Tiffany. Yes. The short answer is yes, please apply. And I think the whole point of having these two stages is that we don't actually, without knowing it, block anyone out. So it's really, that's why it's really important if you can apply for the stage one and just say, you know, like that the stolen generation community is more not so connected to place, but more of a community of themselves because of that violent dispossession and the history. Like, please put that in to stage one so that we take that into account when we're writing the stage two grant guidelines. It's really important.
And we have another question from Jess Morris, who asked, does everyone who expressed interest qualify for round two?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you do qualify if you meet the eligibility and if you meet the organisational eligibility and you're able to answer those 7 questions that we're asking to help us inform stage two. Yeah, so the bar, like if you're an ACO or you're a non-for-profit, then you hop onto Smarty Grants and you're pretty quick through the first stage. Like Nicole was saying, you don't have to have a developed proposal, you don't have to have the budget. It's really just about expressing interest and saying, you know, this is the community I'm applying for. This is what our organisation does. This is what an idea or ideas we have about justice reinvestment and whether there's gaps in current service delivery or whether there's also like, you know, collaborations or partnerships. All of that information is really helpful for us. So those questions, help us to input into the stage two guidelines.
Thanks, Paula. We do have a follow-up question as well from Tom. When will round two guidelines be released?
Yeah, so they'll be released by the 2nd of April. And that's the thing where you get your stage one in on the 18th of March. And then we'll let you know before the 2nd of April if you made it through to stage two. So there's still a month left to apply. Are there any questions about Smarty Grants? Because we've got our brains trust from the grants team here. So that's the next thing about, does anyone want to know about Smarty Grants or how it works or any questions or problems that you've had in the past? We can iron that out as well.
I'm one of the people from the grants team. I'll just say, I won't bore you with an explanation of how Smarty Grants works, but it is pretty straightforward. But if you're having any stress at all, just reach out through the Justice Reinvestment email address. They'll get in contact with us and we can reach out to you to give you some assistance.
Great, thanks, Daniel.
We have a question from Tom, who asks, do organisations need DGR or PBI registration?
So Tom, they don't. They just need to be have a non-for-profit structure or an ACO structure. Yep. There's also on the DCJ website, there is those frequently asked questions that outline like which organisations are eligible, but I can pop it in the chat as well just so that it's clear.
Any other questions at this stage? This is the easy part of the process, the EOI stage. The stage where you get to be creative and think outside the box and look at those innovative ways of doing things differently for your communities. All right. Well, if there's no other questions at this stage. There will certainly be an update that will come out, but Melissa will probably wrap up with all of that other information. But if you think of things after we hop off here, the email is at the bottom of the screen on the slide for you as well to follow up on. Melissa.
Yeah, cool. Thank you everyone for joining. So I guess, yeah, just to wrap it up, there are the resources on the DCJ website. This video will be uploaded in a few days to access at whenever you need to, and then also the video that's already there. We will follow up with an email which will just I guess give you some more key information, but also there's links to the examples that we had given you in terms of what justice reinvestment could be, but then also links to the Commonwealth grants, for instance, as well as contact details, email addresses and phone numbers if we do have the phone numbers. Know that for the next stage, if you get through to the next stage, Thirriwirri, myself, Nicole and our team are there to assist. So just get your EOI in. That's got to have an EOI to get through to be eligible for the next stage. And I think that's it really. Unless anyone's got any more questions. Thank you very much, DC. Paula, did you want to say something to finish as well?
I just think, there's amazing knowledge just in this meeting about everything that's happening on the ground. And I know that, grants, they can take a lot of time, they can be exhausting. I guess with this Justice Reinvestment Grant Program, we're really wanting to design a grant program that listens to what community needs are in the first stage, in that EOI stage. Yeah, so we just really help you apply. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think with that, we're done. Thank you all so much for joining. Have a fabulous week and good luck with round 1. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Nicole. We really appreciate your support. Thanks, Thirriwirri.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing your applications.